Black Doctors Podcast, Season 6.
Hello and welcome back to the Black Doctors Podcast. I am Dr. Stephen Bradley, your host. I am joined this week once again by Dr. Nate Jones, pediatric emergency medicine physician. We're continuing our conversation from last week, and we jump into another conversation, another aspect of that on respectability politics. We talk about navigating these institutions that weren't built for us as minoritized individuals and some of the things we encountered along our path, how we've grown into the positions we are today and are able to improve the pathway for those that are following. So super relevant episode, especially for those that are applying to residency this year, especially for folks that may sit on panels for residency interviews or medical school interviews. Hopefully you'll enjoy this episode of the show. We'll hear a quick word from one of our sponsors and jump into our chat. This podcast is sponsored by Picmonic. In 2011, two medical students came up with the ingenious idea to combine medical education with unforgettable characters and ridiculously memorable stories. Featuring over 35,000 high-yield facts and graphics, Picmonic has helped over 600,000 students improve exam scores and perform better clinically. Picmonic has resources for pre-med and medical students, as well as other healthcare professions. Check out the show notes for a link to their website. Mention the podcast when you subscribe. With Picmonic, you can study less, but remember more.
Yeah.
But it's a big question of, are you proud of your social media presence? And are you happy discussing that on job interviews, on fellowship or residency interviews? And even I don't post anything offensive, but I'm much happier to talk about, I host the Black Doctors Podcast, which focuses on increasing diversity in medicine. And that can be divisive depending on the institution, depending on the person, right? But that's actually a very good thing, because if it's divisive and offensive to you, then please let me know.
Yeah, because it tells you that's not the environment for you to be in.
Yeah, so I can keep it pushing.
Hey, this has been great. I love that you flew me out here. Didn't know you were racist. I'm ready to leave. No, I'm kidding. It's true. It's true. I think that's the idea behind quote unquote respectability politics and how you present yourself. Because in some ways, there is a way that we're supposed to speak and talk. And in a lot of ways, it is a form of defense, right? A lot of minoritized people is to think about how do we get through this society that's not built for us to survive? And how do we get through that? And in a lot of ways, it's to adopt the societal, quote unquote, societal pressures of things, right? Like how you should wear your hair and how you should speak and what you should wear and how you should present yourself online. I mean, I think that's why I talked earlier about having two different Twitter accounts, because one Twitter account, I just want to say whatever I want and nobody knows who I am. And the other one, I'm like, well, let me just repost this study from JAMA and talk about these things. So it's do I read JAMA on a regular basis? Not daily. I definitely don't read it daily. So those are the things that I wonder for you, because I know you've dealt with this, particularly being in the Navy and then being back in civilian life and being an academic center. And then I think there's different levels of what it's like to present ourselves and how we go about things. But I'm curious, you especially your hair journey, because I see you're back to your element. You're back to the initial scene that I knew. You've had a whole journey.
We can talk. Oh my God. So looking back, if you look through my life as is portrayed in living color on Instagram, you can see most of my life.
Very well documented.
You will see a different hair literally every month. It's different hair. And that, I think that is, India, I'm not my hair.
Yeah.
I grew up always getting a Caesar or a fade or whatever. That's been part of my story that actually a lot of people don't know. And I heard some crazy stuff from Black people sliding my DMs talking about my hair, which is,
really
whatever. Oh yeah, people have a lot of stuff to say.
When your hair was cut or when it was
somewhere, yes.
The in-between phase.
The in-between phase, yeah.
Sorry.
So growing up, my dad cut my hair. I made my brother. So I never went to barbershop. So for me, moving to going to college and going to the barbershop with my friends was I was like, oh my God. I remember just walking to the barbershop And then they're like, what do you want? I'm like, oh gosh. And I had to look at that stupid chart that has like
with every
100
number
black heads on it.
Yeah.
And while the whole barbershop is staring at me and I'm like looking at all 50 of these heads that all kind of look very similar. And I'm just going to pick a number. And then I realized like, oh, they don't really do the number. You just got to say like, I want a Caesar faded. Yeah. And then I'm like, do I want the square fade or rod? So it was a very overwhelming experience for me because I didn't grow up going to the barbershop. And then you're going to charge me $25. So then I remember like moving to Howard. And then if you go to the barbershop up the hill across from the university, then those haircuts were like super expensive, like $25, $30. You had to call to book an appointment. I hate scheduling stuff. So that alone is like not gonna do it. And then I went to Alexandria, like the suburbs where I lived that first year of med school, and went to a barbershop there. So again, I hate waiting. I don't like barbershops. So I'm the dude that walks in, first chair that's open. Yo, cut my hair.
What? That's so scary. That's like Russian roulette. What?
It is. And I continue to do so. I hate waiting. I hate getting so. Again, this is at Howard University College of Medicine. It was before our date auction. That's a whole other story. But I go in. I go to the first dude. I remember him sitting there going through his phone or whatever. I'm like, hey man, you cutting? And he looked so surprised that like somebody wanted a haircut. And he proceeded to push my lineup so far back. And then it was my first time seeing the black stuff that they put on your hair to fill it in.
Spray. Oh, I can
bro. And then he filled in my hairline with that. And then I'm like,
you look like a church pastor.
Straight up. I was like, I've had worse haircuts. Not really. It's like one of the worst haircuts, but whatever. Because for me, it's like hair grows back. Like it's going to be different. So then I went to Howard and oh my God. They lit me up. They're like, bro, what happened to your hair? What's going on? They pushed you back.
Wow.
So anyways, I hate going to barbershops. So that was, going through Howard. I kind of grew my hair out a little bit. And then, residency match time. Well, I'm going to get my hair cut. I'm going to get the Caesar. I'm going to get the fade, whatever. Like, I'm going to be, whatever. You talk about respectability politics.
Yeah.
I just want to be like, non-offensive. I want to stick out. I just want to fit in. And that's a, decision that people make for themselves, which we should definitely talk about. But that's what I cut my hair in residency. In the first year or two, I was really like working hard studying my program. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to grow my hair out because I'm going to the Navy. So it's going to get cut. And that's when I freeform locked my hair. And it was freeform locks. I didn't know how I locked my hair. There's a lot of beeswax. There's a lot of random stuff I put in my hair. But I just lower your eyebrow, man.
What is happening over here?
I feel very judged.
You should have called for help.
I probably should have called for help.
Go ahead.
So that was residency. And then my buddy Jared, you remember Jared from Bahari?
Yes,
he's a barber.
Jared.
So he cut
I
my
know he was
hair.
a barber. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. He actually did a good job. He cut my hair when I went to the Navy. And then I had to kind of keep my hair cut. And then I had a date in my phone from the 1 year from getting out. That was my last haircut in the Navy. So then I just grew it out. But the thing was, technically, there's like really strict hair standards. So it had to be like a 3/4 inch fade. Like there's this whole thing. It couldn't be too long. And so I had to like try to be in dress code during the week. And towards, 9 months into this, like my hair was super long. And that's when I was like, yo, what's going on with your hair? Oh, your hair's looking rough. Like everybody's on Instagram. I'm like, yeah, well, I'm growing it out in the Navy. Like I can't get my hair locked because that's not in the dress policy. So it was, it was interesting to hear from, people that looked like me, like, oh, you got a lot to say about my hair, which I don't really care. I don't care about most things in life. And then even my coworkers are like, oh, yeah, hair's getting long there. And then finally, my last weekend in the Navy, I finished my last shift and then went and got my hair locked. So now I have legitimate locks. And that's been my hair journey. And
look at that. Look at that. All the growth. I cannot believe you ran into a random chair. That's crazy. I'm the one. Yeah. Actually, it's funny. Today's the first. I used to get my hair cut every Friday. I get haircut weekly. And,
every week?
Yeah, only because I love a sharp lineup and a good fade. I've had the same hairstyle actually since like residency. And I also do the phone call, and I have like one barber who cuts my hair in his house, and it's very easy.
Oh my God! But you have to go to the shop? every week?
Well, he lives like 3 or 4 blocks from me, so it's very easy. Just walk my butt over there and sit down, talk, and cut my hair. But just like you, I think we all have that similar experience of like coming into like the barbershop, and I'm just like, the fuck? I don't know. To be honest, I actually grew my hair out in high school. I had an afro in high school because I didn't want to go to the barbershop. And then had to figure out how to do that in like college and everything else, which is weird. But yeah, I think that's the idea. Like we enter, and now I think, and I was telling some medical students this a few months ago, but the idea that like your ability to express yourself, I feel like gets relatively easier as you get through your training process, because there's less people that can actually say anything to you about anything. That being said, I think we all have like the noose of professionalism that's around our neck sometimes, because I think it can be tightened to fit anyone's definition of what a professional is. And I think sometimes what people deem to be quote unquote professional is actually oppressive and not actually conducive for people to express themselves. And there are times where like I feel like it's for like branding and business purposes and stuff like that too, which also can be oppressive. So I think it's interesting, right? This idea, like hair is one thing. I think as being Black physicians, sometimes we also have to monitor how you speak, who you talk to, like how you talk to people, how you handle criticism. Because I think some attendees talk to you like crazy, and you're like, this would never. And you're like, all right, how is that professional? But what I'm supposed to do is just like take this. Many a time a nurse or someone is like, or like an attending has spoken to me, I'm just like, who are you? I'm like, all right, well, we're here to train. Again, you're like beaten into this idea that you should be like grateful, like, oh my God, I'm grateful to be abused. Thank you for this.
Right.
Thank you for the opportunity. So I think that's a bit of it. I wonder how I was listening to, actually before we got on here, I was listening to this video clip. I want to say it's Giovanni, in which she's doesn't know.
Who's Giovanni?
Hold on. I gotta make sure I don't mess this up because I love her. So Nick, I call her Giovanni. Like we're friends. Nikki Giovanni or Miss Giovanni. She's a poet. She's a poet. She's actually I think she's at Virginia Tech, I think. A famous Black poet. She was talking to a group of Black women on Instagram, social media. And what she was saying, the best part of being old age, or she's a grandmother, was that like the ability to just be yourself and to love yourself for that. And I think one of the things she said worries about the generation is that I don't think our generation, maybe the generation below us, or maybe we don't love ourselves. And the first thing you should say is that in the morning is you should say, I love you, the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, because that may be the only time you hear it all day. And I was just like, broke my heart. I was like, oh my God, that's real.
So sad.
It's so sad. But I love the idea that like, there's so much beauty. I mean, and this is what we talked about. Like, as you get older, you have the ability to just be yourself and love yourself, and like also have a strong defense against the rest of the world who tell you that you are not enough or that you are different. Because you're different, there's a problem.
Yeah.
Whereas when you're younger, you're so impressionable, and you're similar to the barbershop experience. You're like, you walk in, you're supposed to know that you want to like low cut Caesar with the deep waves, like
the trauma.
Exactly.
PTSD.
Like, you were like, I didn't know that language. It was I didn't know what that was. I don't know what any of those things were. I also didn't watch sports. It was bad. It was a terrible experience. But all some of those things, like, so you're told like you should have these things, you should do these things, and then like you develop your Black identity in some ways, and you go into a profession that doesn't really feed that identity. It actually wants to sort of snuff it out in a lot of ways. And so I think that is that like dissonance in the way of trying to figure out like how do you be your authentic self and who is your authentic self was something that I learned about like even when I first became an attending. I remember my first year, I was just like, I told somebody, I was like, yo, you're very mouthy lately. But I feel like,
wait, what?
I was like, this was that word. This is one of my friends. But I realized it was because like I felt a newfound freedom. Like I can finally say what I want to say, and I can do things the way I want to do it. And I don't feel the need or the fear of retaliation in some way.
Yeah.
And of course, I'm not gonna go crazy and like verbally abuse like, nurses and trainees and other colleagues, but I do think there's just a way of like defending yourself, especially in the medical profession.
Freedom.
Yeah. Like defending what you know. Like people don't come to you like, oh, I'm like, what are you talking about? Like that's the best feeling in the world, that like, as you know your stuff, like it's much harder, especially when you get past training, to be like, no, I don't think trainees should adopt that persona, because I think trainees always should learn. Christina just texted us and said we should hurry up because she's making her game lag. This is the worst, the most unsupportive person. Like, so unsupportive. Oh, man. Well, sorry, I'm gonna go on a rant, but yeah, like that's the idea. Like there should be like that freedom to be able to express yourself, and also like if I wanted to walk in, I mean, sometimes like I'm a Black queer individual, and for me, it's like sometimes I want to walk in. Like my toenails are painted most of the time, and like I've taken out my piercings, I've like done all those things, and then because the institutions that I've been a part of have flip flops. Some of them have been very like opening and inclusive, and I feel comfortable, and some I feel like, oh my god, if I like come in with like crazy glasses or something, someone's gonna look at me sideways. So it's that pressure, and perceived or not, it's real. So I think that's what we're about.
In real time, like, one of the people I've mentored is applying for residency, and they had the most beautiful locks. And all of a sudden, like, I'm scrolling through the Twitter, and this person no longer has their locks.
Oh no.
And I'm like, yo, what's going on?
Yeah.
Everything's okay. Why'd you cut your hair?
Hey there, I hope you're enjoying listening to the show. I wanted to take a minute to talk about TrueLearn and thank them for sponsoring the Black Doctors Podcast. TrueLearn is a medical exam preparation company that helps you outperform on your boards. If you are a medical student or resident physician, you should definitely check out their products. If you sign up, please use the code BDPodcast and you'll get a discount. They have resources for both DO students as well as MD students and even physician assistants. When it comes to residency licensure, they offer question banks for over 8 different specialties. TrueLearn gives analytics that give you insight into your study habits, your question responses, and tracks you along with your peers. Students and residents average 20% improvements after completing a TrueLearn Smart Bank. Check them out at truelearn.com. And again, remember to use the code BDPodcast to receive your special discount. Now back to the show.
Person no longer has their locks.
Oh no.
And I'm like, yo, what's going on?
Yeah.
Everything's okay. Why'd you cut your hair? And they said, hey, I'm applying and I don't think I'm the strongest applicant and I don't want anything that might hold me back.
Yeah.
So I just, basically made themselves as, professional, quote unquote, as possible. And, it broke my heart, but I understand because that was pretty much what I did at that time. Some people, and I, because I've had to give advice to mentors. This person didn't ask me, but people ask me, like, should I cut my hair? Should I do this? Should I do that? And for me, it's always it's a personal decision. Again, that's the decision that I made. I didn't want anything. My number one goal was to match into a residency. And I didn't want anything to detract from that. And I know there's some attendings that listen to this podcast and some program directors. And this is what, your minoritized applicants are actively dealing with during this process. And then, I respect those other people that are like, hey, I'm wearing my locks. I'm wearing my earrings. I know Dr. Rob Drummond, he's actually married to medicine, but he's MD-PhD, he had his earring. Like, he's like, like I wore my earring to all my interviews. And there's people that are like, this is me unapologetically.
Yes.
If you got a problem with it, then I don't want to be here anyways. And I have like utmost respect for those people.
Yeah.
And the advice I give to my trainees and other people, like, you just have to decide who you are and what is your priority. And like, as you mentioned, the further you get from that vulnerable position when I'm looking for jobs or you have gainful employment as a physician, then you can be like, I'm going to be me and I can deal without this opportunity. If I miss an opportunity because I have locks, because I have an earring, because my toenails are painted, I didn't need that opportunity anyways. But we have this kind of empowerment and privilege now to make those.
Yeah. And I mean, and also I think the privilege goes, depending on what your specialty is and where you live and what your family situation's like. Like, I think sometimes you're kind of constrained. Sometimes you have to go to that one healthcare system because that's the only one that's in the state or the area that you're in, and you got to deal with what they're putting you through. But I always feel bad. I especially when there's trainees that are sort of asking, like, how do I present myself so people understand who I am? And my gut is like, just be yourself and let them accept you, because that's how you find the environment you're supposed to be in. The problem is that like, it's not fair because that's not realistic. So you want to tell them because that's the right thing to tell them, because that's the right thing that's how it should be. But at the end of the day, that like the system isn't built for that. The system is only built to handle only so much, and the more you deviate from their image of a physician, the harder it is for them to see you in the role. And I feel like that's that's changing in a lot of ways, but still very
Yeah.
stagnant in so many other ways. So
I think that's us. That's our generation. That's other people before us that have worked to create a more accepting environment. And I think that's the best I can do is like try to change anesthesia. Wherever I end up, whatever program I'm at, I'm the fellow on service. You now have somebody that you can identify with. That's all I can do in some circumstances.
And also being able to like defending the rights of individuals for trainees. I mean, there's multiple. I don't know if you've done like intern selection committee or like faculty selection or any of those things. Like being part of those discussions and being part of what people are saying, you're just like, is that what you picked up from that whole conversation? Like that's like what the way her hair is. That's what you picked up for this whole conversation. Like how does that have anything to do with anything else? Like. And so sometimes it's coded language, right? With what they're like, they're describing, like, and it's not uncommon for me to hear that, especially about, applicants of color. And so like, those are the ones I'm just like, oh God, how do I say something? But now I don't care because I'm older. Yeah. I'm middle-aged. I don't care anymore.
Middle-aged, embrace it.
I no longer care about what, because just what you said, right? I mean, at the end of the day is that like, hopefully though the profession, being in the profession helps protect you in a lot of ways because there's a lot of job security. There are people who are saying outright crazy things, outright racist things that still have their jobs. The idea that I think you should always defend yourself. And I think if you go home and you feel like you made yourself smaller just to fit into that space, then that's not the space for you. Yeah. And it's very easy to say now that I'm at the other end of training. And for those who are in residency or in medical school, like there's light at the end of the tunnel. And when you're in medical school, when you choose your residency, please don't go based off the name. Please don't go based off like, how well known this program is and blah, 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 blah. Like go for the experience, go for the education, but go for the fit. Because a lot of medicine is standardized in a lot of ways. And that's why I did residency. That's why I enjoyed the people I was with residency. I didn't enjoy the work of residency. But
we met in residency.
What? Huh?
We met in residency.
Exactly. No, exactly. Like it was the culture of residency, right? It was the idea that like there were still people out there that were similar to me and understood the suffering and also the process of growing into the field. And then I went to fellowship in DC and loved my experience in DC. I loved every part of it. I love the work and I love the people. That's why I did pediatrics. I could not do the rest of the other stuff. But those things helped. But I feel like, especially because right now, I think the ranked lists are due for a lot of people. I'm like, all I know is pediatric specialists. I know the lists are due, I think today or yesterday. And I think matches November 30th.
I think they're still interviewing.
I think the match day is November 30th, I think. I don't know. Someone posted. Again, I also have information.
Matches in March.
What? Someone said November. Wait, I got my information from social media. Oh my God. From
Elon's Twitter.
Exactly.
No, sorry if you're listening and need advice on the match process. Please do not reach out.
Somebody with a blue check told me that it was November 30th.
I think it's like January and then match days in March.
But that's for residency.
Fellowships are different.
No, I'm talking about fellowship. Yeah.
Oh, fellowship.
Yeah, I think because our fellowships are early. They're usually in December. For P's, at least. I can't speak for everyone else. Because I knew where I matched from right around my birthday.
Oh.
So I think November 30th is when the fellows are going to match. And it's weird because then you're like matched really early in the year and you still have like the whole year of residency. You're just like, why am I doing this?
Get through it.
But for the medical students out there, and we'll probably have we should probably talk to one or two of them and like the next couple of things to think about because they're going to be thinking about their interviews and rank list and what to do. Please don't just choose like these. Some of the big names are great and most of them are awesome. I can only speak for my field, but I do know that there are definitely for all specialties, there are definitely places that work well for applicants and there are the ones that don't work well for other trainees. So I'll find your fit. And talk to attendings. Talk to real attendings who've been through experience, who will speak their mind and will tell you how they feel. So
I wanted to say though, and one thing I learned from you and a couple other people with regards to respectability politics. I know when I first went into medicine, I got into medical school, I'm like, I'm going to be a doctor. And then I think for a lot of people, especially like for a lot of hetero males, right? You're going to be the alpha male. You're going to be a physician. You're going to have everything that comes with being a doctor. And that's easy to like go to your head. And that's for me where that respectability politics first came in, like that concept of you're going to treat me different because I am a physician. And that's something else that I kind of struggled with over the years. Probably the most embarrassing moment was when me and one of my co-medical students wore our white coats to a bar in DC. But
We all can look back at things that we've done in our past and
what possessed you?
Just, I don't know. It was caught up in the moment.
Yeah, you get really excited. I once wore my medical school ID to a bar, and they were like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I don't know if I'm going to get called in." Like, who's calling you in?
You get the pager where it just scrubs out. And it wasn't like, I think hanging out with you, I got better over the years. It's like, it's just a job. It's just a profession.
Yeah.
I kind of first went all in to be a physician and then, rekindled my love for music and kind of had a more balanced career. And I think at some point I was hanging out with you and some of your friends, and one of them made a comment. It's like, because somebody was like, "Oh, it's Dr. Steven, it's Dr. Nate," or whatever. They're like, "No, I'm not calling you that. We're at a bar. Like, that has nothing to do with this." And I was like, "Oh, duh."
Yes.
So,
it's separating those identities. Yeah.
It's made such a huge difference for me. Like when I am talking to a patient, "Hey, I'm Dr. Bradley," and we'll keep it professional. But every other time, whether it's, medical students, whether it's the nurses I'm working with, whether we're out with friends, like being able to separate the two, which for me, it seemed like a foreign concept. Like I'm not a physician all the time. Like I thought that, but I would still kind of think like I should be looked at differently. There should be a little bit more respect. But embracing that, like, I'm just Steven. I work in the hospital.
Yeah.
I'm just a regular person has really changed my mindset and honestly allowed me to make better relationships with friends. Like I said, I'm not that guy that, we stereotypical physician that you see on Grey's Anatomy or whatever. But
like the assholes who like literally. I was in Puerto Rico for spring break in college, and this will be a PG story. But
good. Okay.
We were at a casino, and this guy was super drunk, and he was getting kicked out of the bar, and he was just like, "Do you know who I am? I'm a surgeon, or I'm a physician or something, and I save lives." And I was just like, "Ew, I would never, ever want to say that in my life." Like, hey, I'm literally just cleaning up like RSV right now. Like I'm like, and not that I'm not helping people. Like I definitely am, and maybe I'm saving life every now and then. But like, I don't. It's an essential part of my identity, but I don't integrate it in all aspects of my life because I don't believe that my profession is all of who I am. And I think for some people that works for them and that works how they construct their identity and that works for how they are. But life and people are way much more interesting and there's more nuance. There's more details, more grit to for people. And it's more interesting. It's hard to relate to people when all you do is talk about your job the entire time because there's not that many people that look like us that do our job. But also, it's also like, it's out of, I mean, I divorced the two because I have to be able to like live my life and then go to work, live my life, go to work. But some people integrate it and it works for them. And there's a little bit about respectability when it comes to like, if you're in a society that tells you that you're nothing and all of a sudden you get to infiltrate into a profession that is largely held by white males and you get somewhat of a status upgrade because of that.
Yeah.
But the problem is that like once you leave the hospital, even while you're at the hospital, but once you leave the hospital, that doesn't you don't get a mark of like, there's not something on your forehead that says I'm Dr. So-and-so and people should no one can see that. And people don't assume that. I literally even while I was at the hospital, I forgot my ID and I went to security to go. This happened to me last week. I went to go to get like a temporary ID and they're like, "Oh, where do you work? Do you work EVS?" And I was like, "No, I work in the emergency department." They're like, "Oh, do you like patient registration?" I was like, "No, one of the ER attendings. I need to see the badge. Thanks." But the idea is that, like he's kept guessing my role and I was just like, "Just stop guessing and just listen to what I have to tell you."
Right.
But it's the idea that like people, you can't wear that. And so sometimes like it's easier to navigate certain spaces, especially spaces that you feel uncomfortable with that armor, that white coat armor that you have to be like, well, no, actually you can't, like, whatever. But that same armor is a barrier for you to connecting to other people because no one else really operates like that generally. So I don't know.
Living that double life, like I worked at the trauma center in South Side of Chicago and walking with one of the trauma surgeons who just made the comment of like, he's like a black trauma surgeon. He's like, if I took my white coat off, like, I would just be like one of these patients.
Yeah.
And it's hard, like when you see people treating patients that look like you, in the minds of your colleagues, like, they separate you from them. Like you're one of the good blacks and then this is a gangbanger on the South Side of Chicago.
Exactly.
Or, you see people that are victims of police violence, being pulled over, being executed on the side of the road.
Yeah.
People dissociate you from them, and it's easy for sometimes us to dissociate ourselves like, that would never happen to me because of the way I dress, because of the way I talk, because of
the stethoscope I have hanging
Yeah.
from my rearview mirror, and I am not them. When and in reality, like, it is all of our job to realize that that shouldn't be happening to anybody, regardless of how you dress or talk or speak. And that's kind of with regards to respectability politics. Like, that's the huge burden that I feel the need to take on now, to remind myself, to remind other people that we're all human. Our jobs don't matter. We all deserve the basic human rights and human decency.
Yeah, and then most importantly, we have the right to express ourselves the way we see fit. Any place that you should be able to go to any place you want to exist and not have to minimize any part of yourself. And if you have to walk into a space and be like, well, I can't speak like that right now, or I can't wear my hair like that, or I can't wear this outfit, then you should act like how important it is to you, and is that robbing you of your ability to be yourself? Because at the end of the day, all you have is yourself, right? I mean, the profession will come. I mean, you can't practice medicine for the rest of your life. So it seems like doom and gloom. Hope trainings are like, oh my God, is this what it's like? It kind of is. But
there's some happiness, some funny stories. There's some humor in there.
There's some black joy in medicine. There definitely is. There's so many moments. Actually, I saw a patient the other night who was seen by one of my attendings in DC, and I just noticed her name, and I was like, oh my God. It was just like, it was another black physician. I was like, oh wow. And for a moment I was like, oh yeah, we're all out there. We're out there doing things. But yeah, it's a process. It's a process. It's I mean, when we hang up this call and I go outside and whatever, like, no, I'm back to my regular self. And you have to be aware of that. Like, at the end of the day, if you walk around thinking that people are going to know you're a physician because you're black, that kind of puts you in a vulnerable position because society isn't looking at you like that. I've dealt with it both in and outside the hospital. I mean, the whole thing that happened when I was in residency happened while I was a senior resident there, and I got attacked by a police officer. So it's like in the hospital. So like, not even, it doesn't matter. Like, I always wonder if I was like an older white male, would this man ever touch me? I don't know. Yeah. But I also didn't. I didn't dress like a typical physician, but it doesn't change who I am. But breaking that mold requires people to have that courage to continue to be themselves and continue to push the boundary. And unfortunately, there's some martyrdom that's associated with that. But there is, like, it's about doing the work so those who come after us have a little bit more easier to just be themselves and push them back.
Oh man, that was a lot. We got I know. I think we talked about changing
the hodgepodge of
content. Yeah. Well,
yes.
We talked about kind of changing the flow and dealing with current events. That's one thing that we're really trying to do, and then talking about like real issues, which I feel like we got into.
Yeah.
So
one of the issues we're probably talking about, you can edit this out, but one of the things we're probably talking about soon is the Supreme Court is going to make a decision about affirmative action, and that is going to send shockwaves through medical education, because it's definitely going to be interesting how universities and academic institutions either stand by their policies or don't, and what that means for the numbers of diversity that happens, because I think it's going to be a huge hurdle. Because unfortunately, we have a crackpot of a Supreme Court, and unfortunately, there will most likely be a huge blow. And we can talk about like the actual case and stuff, because I don't think people are aware of how serious. It's very similar.
Wasn't aware. It wasn't on Twitter, so
it was not, because Elon probably got rid of it. But so because of free speech and all. This is huge, and basically it's going to probably limit the ability for institutions to be able to interview and evaluate applicants based off race. Which is sounds like a good thing, right? Like, race shouldn't be a factor, but race is a factor in society, in the world, and we know it is, and we have to accommodate. We have to address it and eliminate it, but also to accommodate for its effects. So,
wow, when is that going to go down?
I don't know. I know hearings. I know initial, they took up the case. I think initial hearings have been done, and there hasn't been a decision yet. But I can talk more about the actual case itself.
Awesome. Well, Dr. Jones, Nate, Nathaniel, thank you so much for coming. Returning to the show.
I'm back. I'm off my sabbatical. I've had if RSV doesn't do me in, I'm back. I'm back. I gotta get my life back on track. So we'll see for the holidays.
Tune in next week to another episode of the Black Doctors Podcast. We're here because representation matters.
Cue the music.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Black Doctors Podcast. Hope you found it helpful. If you haven't already, be sure to follow us on iTunes or Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave a rating, leave a review. This really helps the show to grow. Thank you so much for your support. Tune in next week to another episode of the show. We're here because representation matters. Also, as we look forward to starting season 7, if you're interested in sponsoring the show, please drop us a line either on social media or via email. You can put your business or product in front of our listeners and support our efforts to increase diversity within the healthcare workforce.